Governor and Lieutenant Governor here. We're going to turn it over to them, as well as Grant Kimberly with the Iowa Biodiesel Board and Dennis Bogards with the co-op here that was gracious enough to host us. And, oops, I messed up. And a farmer, I should say. So he is a member of the co-op, but he's a farmer. So with that, we're just going to kick it off with just very appreciative for all the time and effort. You know, governors are pretty busy people, and yet Governor Reynolds never ceases to keep working on the Renewable Fuel Standard. She knows how important it is to rural Iowa, and she's been a fierce defender of it, and we're very anxious to hear what she has to say today. So with that, we'll turn it over to Iowa's Governor, Kim Reynolds.
Thank you, Monty. I appreciate it. Well, thank you, Monty. I appreciate that very much. I want to say thanks to Tracy and Two Rivers for hosting us this afternoon, and for Dennis for being here to take time out of your trying to harvest and everything else you've got going on. So we appreciate you being here for a really important topic. You know, I've been a long and passionate supporter of the biofuels, and as a governor of this great state, I certainly understand how crucial a robust renewable fuel standard is to the farmers and to the entire Iowa economy. Our hardworking farmers, with technology, they continue to increase yields while decreasing inputs and the impact on our natural resources. Our farmers over and over have demonstrated that you can, in fact, feed and fuel the world. Our state has been a long leader, national leader in agriculture. We're number one in corn and soy production. We are number one in ethanol, biodiesel, and cellulosic production as well. The Renewable Fuel Standard plays a major role in sustaining our ability to continue as an agricultural leader by giving farmers another market for their commodities. This market access is especially crucial right now with the current depressed commodity prices that we see. As the current ag economy experiences downturn, sustainability and predictability in the renewable fuel markets are incredibly impactful to the bottom line of our farmers and of rural Iowa and, again, our economy. You know, the stated purpose of the Renewable Fuel Standard is to grow demands for biofuels while driving the industry to innovate. Unfortunately, with the EPA's request for comments implied that there are some who want to take us backward, which is unnecessary and really very highly disruptive. So I want to just say that, first of all, I appreciate the accessibility of the EPA. I have had the opportunity to meet with Administrator Pruitt on multiple occasions and have had conversations with him over the phone. In fact, he reached out to us this morning, and I had a call with the administrator regarding this very issue. I had the opportunity again to express my concerns, and I specifically shared that the 2018 RVO should not be reduced beyond the total of advanced biomass-based diesel volumes previously proposed by the EPA. In fact, I reiterated again that the 2019 RVO volume should be increased and should show growth, and that was the same concern that I expressed when I had the opportunity to testify at the EPA hearings out in Washington, D.C. I insisted that the conventional ethanol should not be cut further. RINs should not be tied to product that is exported, since that defeats really the intent of the law. The RIN concerns could be addressed by giving E15 the same RVP treatment as E10, being able to offer that year-round. And following my call with Administrator Pruitt, I had a very productive call with President Trump, and where both of them personally affirmed to me their continued commitment to the Renewable Fuel Standard. I'm extremely appreciative of the President's continued support for rural America, and I know that the renewable fuels industry is poised to grow once the EPA sends positive and consistent market signals through increasing the volume requirements. The continued growth and success of the renewable fuels industry is critical, and it's really vital to both Iowa's rural and urban communities. And so let me just kind of give you a timeline of what's taken place so far. So I did have the opportunity to testify at the EPA hearing. I submitted a multi-governor letter to the White House on Monday. I had phone calls this morning with both Administrator Pruitt and President Trump, where we talked about continued support for a robust renewable fuel standard. I will be traveling to Washington, D.C. next week, where I will continue the conversation with Vice President Trump, as well as meeting again with Administrator Pruitt to continue really the critical discussion and to thank them again for their commitment to the renewable fuel standards. So from our farm fields to our main streets, Iowans understand the importance of maintaining a strong and robust renewable fuel standard. And I will and will continue to advocate tirelessly for a robust renewable fuel standard. And I would encourage all of you to continue to reach out to your delegation, to the White House, to help them feel the pressure, and they are, that we are all in on this, and it is important and it's critical to not only Iowa farmers, but to the economy in Iowa and rural America. So thank you for being here, and thank you for your continued support. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Lieutenant Governor Gregg, and he's going to explain a little bit more about the all-encompassing relevance of the production of the renewable fuels. Lieutenant Governor?
Well, thank you, Governor Reynolds. As you travel the countryside and you see our farmers diligently working to harvest the crops that they've nurtured all spring and summer, it's easy to see how the grain industry and the renewable fuels industry in Iowa is multifaceted, and it has cascading effects all throughout our economy. So it's not only the production of ethanol and biodiesel, it's also grain and farm supply businesses like Two Rivers Co-op, where we are today, who equip farmers with the inputs needed to raise crops and the market access to sell the crops that they produce. It's the jobs created by manufacturing of tractors, grain bins, and grain dryers. It's the transportation of grain, ethanol, biodiesel, and byproducts from production. It's our blenders, retailers, and distributors who provide access to these lower-cost fuel options desired by consumers. There's no doubt that the footprint of the renewable fuels industry is immense, and any contraction of the RFS would threaten the livelihood of thousands of Iowa farmers and the workers in all those other industries who rely on biofuels to support their livelihood. So it's really important for us to have a strong RFS going forward. And for more on that, I'll turn it over now to Monty Shaw from the Iowa Renewable Fuels Association. Thank you.
Well, again, thanks for everybody coming out today. We've had a little bit of wet weather in Iowa. For those of you who live here, you know that. And the farmers haven't been in the fields much. So I think about the only way we're going to see a farmer today is when they're driving their grain truck across the scales here to bring in some corn or soybeans. I just want to start by once again thanking the governor and lieutenant governor for their steadfast, continuous, and just very passionate support for renewable fuels and for agriculture. We work hard. We have farmers, we have investors, we have plant employees, but sometimes it takes someone like a governor to crystallize that and to get the attention, especially outside the Midwest and out in the Beltway. So whether it was going out to the EPA hearing earlier this year or doing events like today, working the phones, that is so important to the future. I just want to say thank you, because there is an awful lot at stake for Iowa and rural America today. Over the last 2 years, we've actually had a kind of a expansion boom going on in the industry, really for the first time in about a decade. Here in Iowa, we've expanded corn ethanol production capacity, biodiesel production capacity, and cellulosic production capacity. We're actually number one in all three of those categories. And over the last 2 years, we've increased that by about 600 million gallons. That's a lot. And so, having the way to utilize that is going to be very important. So if those gallons, which will finish coming online next year, the expansions have either been completed or started, they'll come online next year. If we can actually operate that stuff, we're talking about adding 11,000 new jobs to the Iowa economy. We just commissioned a study to look at this expansion to see what it would do. And if you want the details on that, Cassie Riley over here has a one-pager, and it's on our website. But that's about 11,000 new jobs, which is 25% more than has been tied to renewable fuels in the past. So right now, if that capacity is running, we'll have about 53,000 jobs in Iowa tied directly and indirectly to renewable fuels production. And that boosts Iowa income by about $500 million, again, up about 24%. So we're really talking about, in a state that's seen farm income down for 3 years in a row now, the potential shot in the arm that this economy could really use. But the key is we have to have these plants operating and running, and a robust renewable fuel standard is key to that. So, we do feel a little threatened right now. I very much appreciate the good news that the governor was able to share today, that we have been able to get the attention of the White House, the president, the EPA. But, up to this point, I'll walk you through a little bit of a timeline. Up to this point, we've been very concerned. Back in July, the EPA rolled out the Trump administration's first RFS proposal. And to be honest with you, we tried to put a positive face on it. It did, after all, include a 15 billion gallon RFS level for corn ethanol, which was the first time that had ever been done in a proposal. But really after that, it wasn't a lot of good news. It flatlined biodiesel, as was mentioned, and it even cut cellulosic ethanol by 25%. So that raised some concerns right there. And even worse, throughout the body of that proposal, at least a dozen times, it asked, should we cut these numbers even lower? Should we cut them even lower? A dozen times. Not once did it say, we've got half of our U.S. biodiesel capacity, for example, sitting idle. Maybe we should increase the biodiesel number. So, we tried not to overreact. We submitted our comments, we did our due diligence, and we hoped for the best. And we trusted in President Trump's commitment to the Renewable Fuel Standard, specifically, and to rural America in general. And so we're kind of waiting to see how that would play out. But then just a few weeks ago here in October, the EPA released a new document called a Notice of Data Availability. That's just a DC term, a NODA, but it meant basically an addendum to their proposal. And in this new proposal, they signaled that they actually wanted to cut biodiesel, not just flatline it, but cut it, and even take the unprecedented step of reopening a previous biodiesel level and lowering it there. And Grant Kimberly will talk more about that later. At the same time, news reports surfaced that have been since verified that the EPA was considering allowing RINs from exported gallons of ethanol we produce here but send overseas, to count toward our domestic RFS requirement. That would basically gut the corn ethanol industry. And this kind of 1-2 punch, at least to us, clearly signaled that the EPA was not on the right track and was not following up with the commitment to follow the letter and the spirit of the Renewable Fuel Standard. And so, quite frankly, it looked like the EPA was looking for just about any and every excuse it could find to lower the numbers for both corn ethanol, biodiesel, and cellulosic ethanol. It kind of felt like the EPA was saying, hey, we're going to put a giant sign across rural America that says closed for business. And people got upset. People were disappointed. And to a certain extent, people even felt betrayed. And so the message that we have been trying to send, and that I think, we've heard today is starting to get home to President Trump, is very clear. President Trump has a decision to make. He can take action to put the EPA back on track with his view of renewable fuels. He's always been very consistent that he wants renewable fuels to be part of his America First energy plan. Or if he sat back, it would essentially allow the EPA to systematically dismantle the RFS. Now, one path leads to hope for the heartland, and one path would lead to a breach of trust that I don't think would be easily repaired. And in fact, if you look at the farm economy, if you look at every bushel of corn that's going across that scale today, that farmer is probably getting paid less than it cost him to produce that. That's what we're facing out here. And I grew up during the 1980s. I do not want to see the RFS be gutted and push the farm economy into another depression like we went through then. So, we're very happy that the president has reached out to our governor. That's progress. That means we're getting their attention. We're excited about that. But as we like to say, the proof is in the pudding. We need to see the final numbers. We need to see the actual results. And so we need to see other actions that could be taken. The EPA could officially end some other attempts to kind of end run and reduce the RFS. Like the RIN export scheme that the governor referred to. There was another issue I won't get into today, but it's called the point of obligation. It was another way, kind of a backdoor way to gut the RFS that the EPA has never officially, pulled the plug on. We want to see cellulosic numbers increased. We want to see the biodiesel number increased. The EPA right now, there's almost a dozen Iowa plants, ethanol plants, that want to produce cellulosic ethanol, and they're simply waiting for the approval from the EPA. They have to give you permission. Yes, you can go ahead and generate cellulosic ethanol RINs that will count in the program, and from our perspective, those approvals just seem to be sitting there gathering dust. So let's move those forwards. And then, as the governor so correctly mentioned, there's a Casey store in downtown Pella that sells E15, but they're not allowed to sell it during the summer because of crazy federal regulations. The EPA could act literally today to say, hey, we're going to allow E15 to be sold year-round. Not only would it allow that Casey store to sell it year-round, but there'd be a lot of retailers that are sitting on the sideline right now saying, well, I like E15, it's cheaper, it's higher octane, it's cleaner burning, but I got to monkey around with this on-again, off-again thing. So it would send a great signal. You want to lower RIN prices. If the EPA really wants to lower RIN prices, then approve E15 right now. And then finally, we would just say if we can do that, with the president's help, we can make the RFS great again, and we can keep rural America open for business and open for investment. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Grant Kimberly with the Iowa Biodiesel Board.
Thank you, Monty. Appreciate that opportunity. I want to say thank you to everyone at Two Rivers Co-op for hosting us today. I want to say thank you to Governor Reynolds and Lieutenant Governor Adam Gregg for everything you're doing, for being here, and in your tireless efforts. So, again, thank you for that. And Dennis, thank you for taking the time. I know this is prime harvest weather, and I know this is quite a commitment to not be on that combine. So thank you for taking the time to be here today. My name is Grant Kimberly. As some of you, as it was said, I serve as the Executive Director of the Iowa Biodiesel Board. I'm also Director of Market Development for the Iowa Soybean Association. Another hat that I wear is I'm also a farmer. I'm a sixth-generation family farmer here in Iowa. My family and I grow soybeans and corn northeast of the Des Moines area. And as a farmer, I am acutely aware of the importance of biofuels like biodiesel and ethanol. So not only am I living this in my professional daily life, but also it's part of my family. It's part of our legacy and our history with our entire agriculture farming operation. Biodiesel, in particular, is for the area that I'm talking about here today, is a valuable market for farmers' soybean oil. And other feedstocks are also utilized in biodiesel, such as livestock animal fats and corn oil from the ethanol process. Also, biodiesel has other wide-ranging benefits where it results in lower feed costs for livestock producers because it adds more protein to the marketplace. In some regions, construction and operation of biodiesel plants has meant the difference between positive and negative margins. And also, it helps the soybean processing sector in Iowa. In some situations, biodiesel and ethanol is a prime reason to keep a processing plant open, which has afforded livestock operations a continued local supply of protein for their feed rations. We have 12 biodiesel plants in Iowa with the capacity to produce more than 400 million gallons of biodiesel. But that capacity remains underutilized. Nationally, biodiesel supports over 64,000 American jobs just alone. And the biodiesel sector does have plants in just about every state. So this is bigger than just a Midwestern Iowa issue. We have biodiesel industry connections all throughout the country. The rumored cuts to biodiesel and ethanol volumes would cost thousands of Iowans their livelihoods as plants are forced to scale back or shut down. This would compound in the larger agriculture economy. As a great example of what we see here today, there's wide-ranging impacts to agriculture in Iowa and the Midwest. It would impact, in Iowa alone, a third of Iowa's economy. A third of Iowa's economy is connected in one way or another to agriculture. The RFS is a program with positive financial consequences to rural America. This program drives income creation in areas of the country where it is often challenging to create jobs. Gutting the RFS would worsen the struggles farmers are already facing and could push us even deeper into an ag recession. We've seen commodity prices 50 to 60% lower than what they were over 5 years ago, and this would do nothing but make that even worse. As Monty said, it would be reminiscent of pushing us back closer to what we experienced in the 1980s farm depression. On the campaign trail, President Trump promised us, and I quote, "We are going to protect the Renewable Fuel Standard." The RFS is an important tool in the mission to achieve energy independence to the United States. I will do all that is in my power as president to achieve that goal. End quotes. During a recent survey that we've done in Iowa, this is also recent, done by More Information Services. 71% of Iowa voters totally support and are very much supportive of the RFS. So there's strong support throughout the state of Iowa. A lot of general consumers understand why it provides benefits to the entire economy. So with that, it's discouraging to see this regression from the promise made to middle America. It's also perplexing because Administrator Pruitt is known for being a constitutional conservative. He spoke frequently about wanting to make sure that the EPA wouldn't overreach, like in the past, some past administrations, and that the EPA would respect the letter of the law. None of the legal authorities cited in the EPA's latest Notice of Additional Data Availability proposal allows EPA to further reduce volumes. EPA may not use its general waiver authority. There is neither an inadequate domestic supply of advanced biofuels nor a severe economic harm. EPA cannot use its biomass-based diesel waiver authority because there are no emergency circumstances causing a severe feedstock shortage or other market disruptions. If anything, the statutory factors within the law of the Renewable Fuel Standard that was passed by Congress about a decade ago make it such that an increase is warranted, not a decrease. I want to say again, we think that there's, based off the law, there should be an increase in biodiesel volumes. So I urge President Trump and Administrator Pruitt and the EPA not to buckle in the interests of certain oil companies and refiners, but rather stay true to promises made on the campaign trail to benefit Iowans and all Americans. This is about America first. This is about American jobs, American energy, national security, and certainly it's about rural America and the American heartland. So thank you again, Governor Reynolds and Lieutenant Governor Gregg, for being here and your tireless efforts on this important issue for our entire state economy and for the entire country. Now I think I'll turn it over to Dennis Bogards, and Dennis will talk a little bit more from a farmer's perspective.
First off, I want to thank Governor Reynolds and Lieutenant Governor Gregg for being here today to talk about the important issue of the RFS, and also to thank you to Two Rivers Co-op for hosting this event. I'm a fourth-generation corn and soybean farmer from Pella. My farm is located about 4 miles northeast of here. I joined the operation in 1992 at a time when the industry was just rebounding, thanks in part to contributions to opportunities provided by the renewable fuels industry. In my nearly 3 decades of farming, I have seen and experienced the economic ups and downs of my profession. I've also become very aware of the important role of biodiesel and ethanol plays in Midwest agriculture. I remember a time when excess supplies of soy oil and corn saturated the market and bogged down the price of corn and soybeans. But then ethanol and biodiesel market was established, and it converted the oversupply of corn and soybean oil, animal fats, and cornstarch into a renewable fuel. Suddenly the oil, animal fats, and cornstarch became a value commodity, helping boost the overall value of corn and soybeans while providing additional protein feed sources for livestock sector, and offering a clean burning fuel to power America and to reduce our dependence on foreign petroleum-based energy sources. We currently use biodiesel in all of our farm equipment and semi, and ethanol in all of our gas-powered vehicles. I'm also an investor in an ethanol plant. So this is very important to me and many farmers in this area that are doing the same. Biodiesel and ethanol has also provided a boost to our commodity prices for farmers and ultimately to our bottom lines. In fact, biodiesel has added 63 cents of value to every bushel of soybeans grown by Iowa farmers. This allows us to support our local economies by buying and upgrading equipment, improving infrastructure on our farm, and supporting our local co-ops like Two Rivers Co-op. All these touch points provide jobs and money to businesses in small towns that might not have otherwise seen growth and industry. It also helps us to reduce feed costs to livestock farmers by decreasing feed by $21 per ton of soybean meal. Iowa farmers have always been able to keep up with demand for large amounts of grain. This year, during one of the worst droughts in my 27 years of farming, I expect to grow one of the largest crops that I've ever grown. In fact, just last week, the U.S. Department of Agriculture predicted Iowa farmers would grow more than 550 million bushels of soybeans, a harvest total that puts us on track to grow the second largest soybean crop in Iowa history. Additionally, Iowa could produce 2.46 billion bushels of corn this year, which is another large crop. At this time of low commodity prices and large inventories of grain, cutting an industry that is built around the RFS would be devastating to farmers in rural communities. The very folks who elected President Trump in 2016, and a segment already struggling under large supplies and market prices largely below the cost of production. I would urge EPA Administrator Pruitt and President Trump to not only retain the RFS, but look for opportunities to expand it. Biodiesel and other renewable fuels are extremely important not only to my family, but to the state's economy, to Midwest agriculture as a whole. I ask that the EPA and President hold true to their word and maintain the jobs and the industry that they vowed to protect. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, I think you've heard some pretty passionate arguments about why this is the right thing to do and how it is in the best interest of our farmers and rural America to really continue to fight for a robust renewable fuel standard. So at this time, we'll open it up to questions.
Governor, when you talked to President Trump this morning, did he repeat the pledge that he made during the campaign to support the renewable fuel standard?
Yep. When I talked to the president this morning, now we talked about healthcare and we talked about the renewable fuel both, and he reiterated his commitment to the renewable fuel standard. He did. He reiterated it was a very constructive conversation. He made it clear that he stood with the renewable fuel standard. So I felt very good after the conversation with both him and the administrator. But that doesn't mean we stop. That's why I'm going to continue to meet next week. We're going to continue the conversation. We should never let down. They're in the public comment period. That doesn't end till tomorrow. So that limits some of what they can say, but especially the administrator. But they both reiterated to me their commitment to the renewable fuel standard.
Did you ask him to intervene with the EPA?
I talked about how important it was. I made the case. He understood it. He's been in Iowa. He talked about the farmers. He talked about visiting the facilities. And I talked about, the depressed commodity prices, the impact that has on our farmers and our producers and how important it was. I also reiterated to him passionately that if we continue to set a robust RFS, I know, just like we have in the past, we can meet and exceed that expectation. We just need we need them to follow through what the stated purpose was for the renewable fuel standard, and that was to grow the production of biofuels and really, by doing that, incentivize innovation. And that's what we need to do. We need to bring certainty and stability back to the market, because when we're disrupting it like we are right now, then that impacts investment. We've already had people commit. We've had production in place. And so especially at a volatile time that we have right now in our economy, it's really important that we provide the stability and predictability that investors and producers need so they can continue to do what they do, and that's produce.
Did you get any kind of a promise for no cuts when you had your conversations with the EPA administrator and the president today? Did they come out and say there wouldn't be cuts?
No, but I reiterated my position that was going in the wrong direction. They understood how important it was to maintain a robust renewable fuel standard. I talked about the levels. I talked about the testimony at the hearing and talked about the importance of moving forward. I laid out all of what I just said. So it was a very constructive conversation, and I'm not stopping. We can't let up. That's not what I'm saying. I will continue to encourage them to move forward. In addition to that, I want to just say, too, both of them had also talked to Senator Grassley as well as Senator Ernst. So they are in conversations with our senators as well as myself.
John,
Governor, it's been reported that since 2002, Scott Pruitt received over $300,000 in campaign contributions from the fossil fuel industry. How can you have any confidence that he'll back the RFS, given his connection to fossil fuel?
Well, first of all, he's part of the Trump administration, and I think the administration has made it clear that they support a robust renewable fuel standard. I have met with Administrator Pruitt on multiple occasions. We've had this very discussion. I think he's made, first of all, they've done it in a timely manner. Part of the problem with the previous administration was it really did impact. It provided uncertainty and really didn't provide any stability. They delayed setting the RVO, so that was disruptive to the industry. So I want to commend them on some of the things that they've done. I think they understand the importance of the renewable fuel standard, a robust renewable fuel standard. We can't go backwards. We need to continue to go forward. I reiterated over and over that we need to seek growth, especially with the biodiesel and the advanced biofuels. If we're going to continue to see investment and we're going to stand by the intent of the renewable fuel standard, then we need to see growth. We can't be going backwards. That has just the opposite effect. We talked about the RENs and the impact that would have. And so we had a very good conversation about why it was important to move forward and how devastating it would be to go the other way. It is in the comment period, so they're limited as to what they can say, but I certainly felt like I had the opportunity to make my case.
So without those pledges on those specific elements, what gives you confidence or makes you feel any better now that you
Well, first of all,
those phone calls?
I didn't mean to interrupt you. Excuse me. I apologize for that. But first of all, he reached out to me. They are feeling the pressure, and that's why we need to keep it up. We can't let down. We need to continue to talk about the importance and why it's necessary to show growth, to stand behind a robust renewable fuel standard. So, I had a meeting set up with him next week, but they reached out to talk to me this morning so that he could reiterate his commitment to the renewable fuel standard, some of the things they put in place. He talked about the process that they're going through, that some of the things were being taken out of context. So right now, I'm very encouraged. It was a positive conversation, and we're going to continue that conversation next week when I meet with him and Vice President Pence in Washington, D.C. And I know our senators are doing the same thing. So we need them, to move forward with this. We need an answer on it.
Do you mind if I ask you about what the president said about the healthcare on the stopgap proposal? Did he seem any more willing to?
Well, again, I want to just tell you, I called him to thank him for the access to the administration. And it's not only the White House, but with CMS. He really has empowered SEMA, Burma, and CMS to work with Iowa to help them find a short-term solution to a collapsing and unaffordable, unsustainable Obamacare. We walked through the where we're at in the process, so I thanked him for really providing and working with us to help find a solution. So I don't think the waiver is so much a problem. I mean, we didn't, but the problem is it's so inflexible. So trying to, it's kind of ironic. It's called an innovative 1332 waiver, and it's anything but. So it is very inflexible. It's very prescriptive. It makes it very hard to try to find a solution where I can try to do my best to provide an option for 72,000 Iowans, as well as try to do our best to kind of bring down the increasing health care premiums to try to keep it affordable so that Iowans can actually afford to have health care, and then try to do all of that within this waiver process that's not very flexible. So a couple things. The bill that was just released, the Alexander Murray bill, we're hearing, I haven't seen the details, possibly provide some flexibility to the waiver. That could be a good thing for Iowa. The executive order that he released, I think it was this week or last week, I'm not sure, talked about the opportunity for short-term insurance. That could potentially, and the expedited rulemaking process, that potentially could be a positive thing in the interim until what absolutely needs to happen, and that's a long-term solution. We need Congress to step up and repeal and replace. We need them to do what they said they were going to do. So everything that we talked about, he understood. I mean, we talked about where Iowa was at, what we were working on. I thanked him for his help throughout the process, but ultimately we both agreed on the fact that we need Congress to do something and we need a long-term solution. That anything that we're looking at right now is short-term and to try to find some affordable option for about 72,000 Iowans.
Do you think so far that President Trump has lived up to his campaign promise to back the RFS as it stands right now?
Well, yeah, I've taken him at his word. I mean, he reiterated that to me personally this morning. So, and he indicated that the last, I think he was in the state, I don't know, it's been probably 3 months ago, but he, at that point, so, you know, we're hopeful. But again, we're gonna continue to push for the answers that we're looking for. It's not done until it's done. And if you ever think that it is, then you're mistaken. So you don't stop until you get the final numbers, and then you start working on the next one, you know? So, and it starts the next day. And because this is so important to Iowa, to rural Iowa, to our economy, to choice at the pump, we are not gonna stop. It's the right thing to do. Our farmers are producers, we are innovative, and we will continue to advance the renewable fuel industry if we are given the opportunity and if they will set the volumes at a level that encourages us to do what we do best, and that's get out there and innovate and grow, produce. That's what we do, right? That's what we do. That's who we are. That's who we are. So, thank you.
I appreciate it.